So let's all pretend for a moment that we are all doing something active that we actually enjoy doing, whether it be playing sports, going on an important hike, or maybe marching in a band or something like that. With this, when you do that, imagine that you're at the semifinals of the biggest football game, soccer game, maybe a regional track meet, or it's the competition for band that makes you go to state. It's that determining factor. Well, with this, imagine that you're so close to finishing. You have maybe half a race left, or you're at halftime, or maybe you just found out that you're about to compete next for band. Well, then imagine that you break your leg or you break your arm. Well, this may seem unlikely to you, but this has actually happened to me my freshman year, which during my regional cross-country meet, I broke my right fibula. And for this reason, I am interested in physical therapy, because those 6 weeks that I was supposed to sit out quickly turned into 6 months of recovery that I ended up being in. So my name is Kamryn OW, and this is the main reason that I decided to do ISM, which was to learn more about physical therapy, because it became a passion of mine freshman year as I began to study more and undergo physical therapy. So life is often compared to a marathon, but I think it's more like being a sprinter. Long stretches of hard work punctuated by brief moments in which we are given the opportunity to perform at our best. This was said by Michael Johnson, and I think it describes not only physical therapy, but also ISM and life in general, just because there are so many opportunities that we're given through this amazing program, and we are told that we take everything in stride, and as we take these opportunities, we can present ourselves in a better way and learn more. So this class is really something that you make it, and that's something I love about this class. So the reason I decided to do physical therapy was not just to learn about sports and be involved in an active environment, but also to learn more about how to get people better, whether that be through rehabilitation for orthopedics or neurologically. So with this, a little bit about me. Some hobbies that I do are just running cross country and track. I'm also part of NHS, as well as heavily involved in different school activities. I love to travel, and so with this, I've been able to go to Europe twice, and I've been to several different countries, one of which my favorite cities actually was Sorrento, Italy. And I love the culture that it brought to the table, and just how everyone was different, and it was lively, and everything just went on as if life was amazing, which was something that really drew me to it. I live with my mom, dad, and my little sister, who attends Reedy High School, and she plays softball there. She'll graduate in 2018, so she's 2 years after me. This is a picture I took when I was in Paris, just of the Eiffel Tower. That's my family. And then this is actually Assisi, Italy, which was another great place that I went to. So through ISM, I've been able to conduct multiple interviews. My first actually being with one of my old coaches, which was really great just because I was able to be more comfortable with who I was talking to, and his name was Drew Little. He works at the Michael Johnson Training Performance Center, and he was also very good about stressing certain ideas, such as the importance of networking and how each one of his own personal jobs was connected through networking. This was important to him just because that's how he's been able to go through his livelihood and been able to progress up the ladder through his job. So he was able to start at the bottom as an intern, which are mostly unpaid for physical therapists, and as you work your way up, you end up getting hired into possible companies that maybe you have interned for, or you work through with college. And so he also said that through these internships, which are usually unpaid, you need to be an extremely diligent worker. This is imperative just because when a worker who's actually employed there, who could have a say in your potential future at the company, is watching you, they're watching everything you do, whether it be, just waiting for your free time, to going, instead of just standing around and watching everything, to actually going and maybe cleaning a facility that, they didn't have to ask you to do. And so he said with this, you also only get one good first impression, and that determines the rest of your future. My second interview was with a performance specialist who also works at Michael Johnson Training Facility. Her name is Miss Anderson, and she was the only female performance specialist that I interviewed. She was very active, and I loved going on this interview just because she had me walk around with her as we did the interview. And so it wasn't just standing around, asking questions back and forth, giving her answers. I was actually able to go through and observe and shadow her as we did the interview. So with this, she said, anything that you do, whether it be physical therapy or coaching, you need to be knowledgeable about the sport that you were involved with. She coaches several football players and baseball players, and she's about 5'3", and so she's not exactly the football player, and so she says that she has tons of respect from these guys just because she's able to go and say exactly what each position requires, and so that's very important, as well as being able to demonstrate, because if you're put in perhaps an international position, you might have a language barrier that keeps you from actually speaking to your athlete if there's not a translator next to you, and so therefore you need to be able to demonstrate, also to build trust, because that, if you're able to do the exercise that you're asking others to do, they'll be more likely to go through and actually perform it. My third interview was actually my first interview with a physical therapist, and this was Brian Heiser. He works both at Michael Johnson Training Facility and at Orthopedic Texas, and this was an interesting interview just because he works with the general public and general population at Ortho Texas, but is also trying to specialize in sports with Michael Johnson. So he goes back and forth and spends time at each one. He said, with this, you have to make sure you love what you do. Keep your grades up in school, because physical therapy school is extremely difficult to get into, and it's extremely competitive. And so with this, he had several hundred hours of observations and experience, and he just had to go through and continue that and persevere through any rejections that he had. And so that was him. My fourth interview was with Hanson Yang. He's the Dallas Cowboys' only physical therapist, and so we actually didn't get to meet at his office just because they were in season at the time and they were extremely busy and everything was going on. And so he is explaining how the hours for a sports-specific team physical therapist is very different than maybe a training facility, just because you have to follow your team around and you have to go anywhere they go, and you're at their hands and their feet, just doing anything they need you to do. He said, keep an open mind while in school, because you may go in thinking that, sports is what I want to do, but you may come out thinking pediatrics or geriatrics is something that you want to specialize in instead. My fifth interview, who is also my mentor now, is Brittany Cookenham. She was a soccer player who used to go to Heartland University up in New York, and she taught me that through this you should push further past your expectations, and so she actually has a degree in athletic training and physical therapy, so she double majored, and this helped her get her position at Exos, which is where she is now, because it's an extremely competitive job market. She said, make sure you continue to log your observation hours and just continue to keep up with everything that you're doing that goes towards your desired major. So far, my physical therapy research has been vast and covered lots of different areas. For my career outlook, it continues to be one of the growing industries, just because there's so many people who continuously get injured and need to be nursed back to health, whether it be just after general surgery or maybe through sports. Also, another thing that makes this one of the best future positions in the career field in the United States is our baby boomers are starting to get old and start needing more help than they have been in the past, and so geriatric physical therapy is going to be a huge job market. Another thing that I've learned about this year is needling for myofascial pain control. This includes, or it's very similar to acupuncture, but a lot of times with physical therapy they use it as dry needling. So you go through and you set the needles down into the muscle to bring heat, temperature to the muscles in order to get the blood flowing and loosen up your muscles, whether it's to release their tightness and to enhance mobility. Stress fractures in high school athletes was another thing I looked at. I learned that more girls are susceptible to this just because of different things they go through and with their body changing through high school. Also, you're more susceptible at a younger age, and impact sports contribute to this injury the most just because you're constantly hitting against your bone structure, and it's very hard on the body if you don't have strong bones in there. Managing ACL tears. So with this, many doctors had to go through and they determined whether you actually needed surgery or not. And so a lot of research is showing that if you're not going back to hard labor or hard sports, it may actually be more beneficial to not have surgery on your ACL tear, just because of the way, depending on the severity of it, it may be better for you just to go through physical therapy as to not put as much stress on the body when going through this. Also, what I've learned about ACL tears is that it's a series of muscles that start down in your pelvic region and go across the knees, and so you have to strengthen all of those muscles in order to enhance everything that goes into these tears. My other research has been, we got to go to the University of North Texas, and so I took different classes just that had to do with my major, and then I took one class that was just kind of for fun, but I got to sit in on a sports psychology class and the introduction to kinesiology class. These were both extremely interesting because it was really nice to be able to learn the background of everything that I've gotten to go through. Also, the introduction to kinesiology class actually had a panel similar to the one that we had at our ISM Business Symposium of different physical therapists, professionals that were able to come in and just talk about everything that they've done so far in order to get to where they are now. The Graston technique is just one term for, actually there's several. The general term would be a scraping technique. There's actually multiple different names for it depending on the company that you go through. The Graston technique specifically uses metal tools, but there are other companies that use plastic, and then you also can put lotion on the top of the body where you're scraping down, and this is to get a deep, similar to a deep tissue massage. It's to get blood flowing and increase heat, because as of right now, applying heat to an injury is kind of all the rage. It used to be ice, and now they're talking about, the new research is all showing heat, heat, heat. And so this is typically for soft tissue injuries. Okay, some more research that I've conducted is things such as shin splints, which are constant agitations usually caused by impact sports as well. These can contribute to more complex injuries as we go through whatever training you're doing, such as, they can start to cause stress fractures and other kinds of breaks and injuries throughout the body. Dynamic neuromuscular stabilization and sports rehabilitation is a specific study that started in the School of Prague, the Physical Therapy School of Prague, which is in the Czech Republic, and so there have been several physical therapists that actually took time, and physiotherapists took time to study baby movements. These are the fundamental movements that we learn as a child, and this theory goes on the fact that as we're born, each movement that we have, each stage that we get older, our brain starts to mature, and with that, movements have already been implanted into our minds in order to, start moving and going along. As these developmental movements progress, they start small and they go slowly into a more complex movement. So for instance, if a baby started to lift its chest up off the ground, or pick up a leg, or swing a shoulder to the side, those are all progressive movements to help it roll over at a certain age. A lot of physical therapists use this because after going through surgery or any kind of injury, a lot of times you have to retrain your brain to properly move. So a lot of this has actually been overridden as we get to be adults because we're lazy, and so instead of doing a perfect squat to pick up a remote off the floor, we end up bending over. This means that our muscles are actually compensating, and that leads to further injury. So for my original work, I decided that I was going to create a website that had an informational website that not only gave you specific exercises to do with certain injuries, but also told you why you were doing them, because I felt that more people were likely to actually go home and complete these exercises if they knew why they were doing it, instead of thinking that it was pointless and that they should just skip it and they would be fine and it wouldn't have any effect on them going to physical therapy. So with this, I had to go through and do a lot of research, specifically with different articles through our school's resources, as well as such as like Mac and Via, or through online websites that other physical therapy centers have provided. And so I had to go through and decide what muscles actually were affected by certain injuries and how you needed to go about strengthening each one of those. And I found through this that it's typically not the actual muscle that's injured that causes the problem. It's a lot of the muscles or tissues or just anything around tendons, things like that, that actually are weak. And so those cause the central tendon, muscle, bone to actually get injured. So with this was the opening page, and it just has different tabs that explains what sports physical therapy is. Each tab goes through and gives you what you're looking for. So this is the injury recovery page, which was the main part of my whole original work. So going through this, Achilles tendonitis, there were different calf stretches. It's called a bilateral heel drop and sitting toe pulls. And so a lot of these have already been exercises that were created, but specifically they can be used to a general population for multiple injuries. However, what I would go through and do is possibly alter the exercise in order to fit the specific injury. So this was for runner's knee, and it talked about just strengthening the inner thigh and the different quads and stuff, things like that, to actually help reduce the pain in runner's knee. This was with shin splints, and it talked about the muscles around it. You need to strengthen all the way down from your lower quartile region, which starts just above the pelvis and goes all the way down through your toes. This was for an ankle sprain. Again, you see some repeated injuries, but there's different ones specified to different pain levels and what kind of injury it is. So this is called exercise education. This is where I went through and put each exercise that was listed previously, and if it was repeated, there would be a different label for it. And so what I did with this was I said how this helps you with, and then I would list the actual injury, and then I would explain why each one was beneficial to you. And it would also talk about which specific muscles you were focusing on as you did the exercise for each injury. There are also diagrams to show how you would go through that. So this is my mentor. Her name is Brittany Cookingham. She's actually not up there because she was on the earlier previous slide, but I plan on going and putting this in. Her name is Brittany Cookingham. As I said, she played soccer for Sacred Heart, and the reason she actually got into physical therapy was because she's had several injuries that deal with her ACL, and she's had multiple surgeries that just help her go through this. And so as she was injured, she really decided that this was something she wanted to do as she spent time in the training room. So she works at Exos, which was formerly known as Athletes Performance. This facility works with professional athletes, high school athletes, elite athletes, anyone who's looking to further progress their enhanced sports performance. And so this is the facility that she has, or she doesn't have it, sorry, she works there. And so it's connected to Fieldhouse just because of the resources they're able to use. This is the indoor field that they're able to train on. And those are some of the equipment. It's all state-of-the-art, brand new, kept up to date, continuously being redone if some new research has come out. So as for me, I plan on hopefully attending the University of Southern California in the fall and running cross-country and track for both of them if everything works out the way it should be. I plan to major in pre-physical therapy or biology. It will most likely be biology with a focus on pre-physical therapy, and then going to PT school to obtain my physical therapy doctorate degree. I also hope to work as a physical therapist in specialized sports, whether it be internationally for a team overseas or for a company that hires people out, as well as something similar to Exos or Michael Johnson facility. Thank you all for listening to my speech and coming to the presentation.